Welcome back. Now back to this story. Electricity Minister Dr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa has given an update on the Energy Action Plan. The minister highlighted that Eskom dropped the ball this past week when unplanned outages shot up to over 17,000 megawatts. He also says that it won't be possible to exempt all schools from blackouts, leaving grade 12 pupils in the dark during their study sessions for their final exams. To unpack this further, we are joined by Professor Hartmut Winkler from the University of Johannesburg. He joins us in studio. Thank you so much for your time, Professor. We do appreciate it. I think South Africans were starting to feel a lot more confident and comfortable seeing lower stages of load shedding, and I think a couple of days without any stages of load shedding. But this past week, as I've just mentioned, 17,000 megawatts of unplanned outages, which does seem to be a bit worrisome. Do you think that we are making progress and there are some green shoots, or is this all being masked?
Yes, I think one needs to take a much longer term view at what's happening. The fact that we've gone 2 or 3 months with less load shedding than I think most people expected is a very positive sign. I think that does indicate that we seem to be, put it that way, we maybe haven't quite reached the bottom yet, but we're getting close to it. And so I think the situation could get better soon. But I think it was maybe unrealistic for people to think that it's so easy to get out of load shedding. I think there was an element of luck involved as well. I think some of the power stations, which normally break down much more often for whatever reason, and I think there's probably nothing more to it than just chance. We just don't know. These are old power stations. They've been driven very hard. They could break down almost at any time. And so just like in gambling, like somebody might have a good run where they'll win 3 or 4 times in a row. I think we had a bit of that, and now we're probably doing the opposite again. So I think it's all going to average out. But even so, what we're seeing this week is still not that bad.
Absolutely. And just speaking of power stations, I want to get into the issue of how much diesel we are burning. But I know that the minister tomorrow is going to start on a revisit, if we can call it that, to a number of power stations, and he's going to be starting at the Adnot and Hendrina power station tomorrow. These 2 power stations, not too problematic, but I think Hendrina, if I'm not mistaken, is quite a problematic one with some units not working there. But the minister has said this before, that the units that aren't working or power stations that are planning to be decommissioned, there should be a consideration for them to be brought back online. And that's worrisome because we're trying to go greener, we're trying to eliminate our carbon footprints, but we're still heavily reliant on coal-fired power stations. Is this worrisome, and is this actually a solution to bringing an end to our load shedding?
Yes, well, you mentioned Hendrina and Arnott. Those are 2 of the older ones. I don't know the exact date when they're supposed to be decommissioned, but we're not quite there yet. I think the Minister also mentioned that the Integrated Resource Plan for Electricity is going to be put out for public comment very soon. Now, we've been waiting for that for quite a long time. And in that, at least in the last one, and I expect it's going to be the same this time around, there is a schedule about when how many coal plants are expected to be decommissioned. So you get a sense of the timeline. I don't know to what extent that's going to change that. But yes, right now we're in a situation where probably can't really decommission anything which is actually working. The only way you would stop a plant from running now and just close it down is if you actually run into some problems that would need repair work, which is just too expensive to sort out. I think that's also the situation where Eskom is right now. I think there's quite a few other plants where they're probably not doing everything they can to repair things, simply because in some instances it's probably just not worth it.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, if you look at Kusile, it's one of our newest, but probably one of the most problematic. I'm going to be quite straightforward with this question, but is the solution to build more power stations, or should we really now start focusing on alternative sources of power like solar?
I think the country really can do a lot more in terms of solar. At the moment, we still, if you look at how much electricity gets produced from solar and wind, it's minute compared to other places in the world which have far worse weather conditions for these kind of technologies. And already the country is, about 80% of the country's electricity comes from coal, which is also extraordinarily high. There's not many countries in the world which have that sort of fraction of coal still running. So it's not something which is going to happen overnight. It's a transition which is going to take 20 years or longer. And that. So people who think that the coal plants are about to be all switched off and replaced with renewables. Logistically, that's not really possible. But what they really need to do is get the ball rolling now. That's why I'd be interested to see this new plan, because it's prepared by the Department of Mineral and Energy. And we know the minister there is not a great fan of solar and wind. He prefers coal, nuclear and gas. So we're going to see what's going to happen. My suspicion is that this new plan is going to include new coal plants, new nuclear plants and new gas plants. And there's going to be a bit of a debate about that because I also expect that the preferred option as far as cost and that is concerned would be one which it really focuses like 90 to 100% on new renewables, bearing in mind that Koeberg is getting a life extension. And so the plan is that should run for another 20 years. That's another story, that it hasn't been done terribly well. So right now I'm not even 100% sure that's going to happen. But there is nuclear. To build a new nuclear plant or a new coal plant is going to take a long time, probably a decade or longer. These are not short-term solutions. Gas you might be able to do a little bit quicker. But with gas, you're always at the mercy of the gas price. And
so the short-term solution would be solar? Is that what you're
yes,
saying?
it will take you about 2 to 3 years. The actual construction is about a year and a half. The rest of the time is just getting the permits and the financing organized. But if, as I say, they want to get the bid window 7 now started quite soon, before the end of the year. It's already a little bit late as well. Well, never mind that all these bids are about 2 years late. But okay, if they're going to get bid window 7 up and running now, well, it will probably mean that those plants will come online at the end of it's now 2023, so 2026 or so.
Yeah. So I want to speak about how much diesel we are burning because, you know, as much as we have had some break from load shedding, severe stages of load shedding, we're still burning a reasonable amount of diesel. And that to me is worrisome. I mean, I don't know the intricacies of how power stations work, but surely this should not be the case. We shouldn't be burning so much diesel. What do you make of that?
Yes, well, the diesel is only for emergencies. And the reason for that is that it's very expensive. The advantage is you can start one of those plants up quite quickly, which you can't do with nuclear or coal plants. So if you relatively quickly need extra power, you would use those plants. But that's what they were designed for. They're not designed to be run 24 hours. Yet that's what's really been happening now. And yes, it's got to do with cost. So just buying all that diesel, which at the moment the fuel price is rather high. It's been very high in the last year as well. And yes, sure, it's kept the load shedding at lower stages to what it would have been otherwise, but we're feeling it elsewhere. We can see now that everybody's talking about the mini budget and how there's not much money for anything. And that's part of the reason for that.
Absolutely, and I would say unsustainable. Just lastly and very quickly, Professor, the minister was brought in to deal with load shedding. And, you know, there have been some reports or concerns, criticism, if you like, that all of this is being resolved because we are going into an election year next year. But what do you make of the minister's term so far? Do you think that he is making progress in terms of really getting to the bottom of this 15-year, I would say it's probably a bit longer than 15 years, ongoing load shedding and energy crisis?
Yeah, there's no quick solution. Whether you put me in or whoever the best person in the world is or somebody else, you're not going to solve this in a short time. So I think anybody who had expectation that the minister was going to sort this out before Christmas, as some people seem to think, it's just not going to happen. So based on that, one's got to look at how he's generally been managing the situation. What I like is that he has been having these regular updates where he actually tells us what is going on. I think that's very positive. And he also does seem to have a genuine understanding of some of the technical issues. I suppose he's an engineer, so it helps in that regard. So I see him relatively positively. I can't point to any major mistakes he may have done so far. His powers are also slightly limited because he is sitting between two other ministries, the one which runs Eskom, the other one which runs energy planning. So from that sense, it also makes it acting quite tricky. But overall, of all the cabinet ministers, I'd rate him as one of the highest.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time and thanks for your insights. We do appreciate you coming through to studio to speak to us. That was Professor Hartmut Winkler, who is from the University of Johannesburg.